Welcome back to my podcast. Today we're going to be talking about performing Porter's 5 force analysis. Porter's 5 forces are the characteristics of an industry environment that have the greatest impact on the performance of the firms in that industry. The most fundamental mistake that students and many other people commonly make when analyzing these forces is that they analyze them from the perspective of an individual firm. For example, they might say the bargaining power of suppliers for PepsiCo is low because PepsiCo has many options for suppliers of most of their inputs. This is incorrect. Correct version of the statement would start, the bargaining power of suppliers in soft drink industry is low because Porter's 5 forces are like the weather. The weather on campus is the same for every person on campus. However, different people make different decisions to deal with the weather. Long sleeve versus short sleeves, carry an umbrella versus wear a raincoat, and so on. In a similar way, although Porter's 5 forces are the same for every firm in an industry, different firms make different strategic decisions to equip themselves against those forces. Some firms might source from multiple suppliers to reduce supplier bargaining power, or assign customers to exclusive long-term contracts to reduce buyer bargaining power. When performing Porter's 5 forces analysis on behalf of a single firm, each force must first be analyzed from the perspective of the entire industry before any discussion or analysis is provided concerning how that firm is equipped to deal with that force. For example, one could say the bargaining power of buyers in the soft drink industry is fairly strong due to purchase volume and backward integration. However, PepsiCo's brand image and loyal customer base mitigate this power somewhat. To perform Porter's 5 force analysis, identify the most relevant factors for each force and identify the direction and magnitude of the impact of those factors. If most of the impact indicates a strong force identity, the force is strong. If most of the impact indicates a weak force identity, the force is weak. If the main factors balance each other out, then identity, the force is moderate. Here are a few force-specific notes to keep in mind. Threat of new entrants. To assess the threat of new entrants, you must identify the strength of barriers to entry. If you do not discuss barriers to entry, then you are not probably assessing this threat. If you identify the threat of new entrants as low, but there are several recent clear examples of successful entrants, you are probably doing it incorrectly and need to reassess. Remember that high barriers to entry mean a low threat of new entrants and vice versa. Now, supplier bargaining power. In Porter's 5 force analysis, suppliers are firms that sell inputs to an industry. Suppliers do not sell directly to buyers, unless suppliers are forward integrated or buyers are backward integrated. To assess supplier bargaining power, you need to identify the most important suppliers first. Then you can assess questions of the relative number of suppliers versus number of firms in the industry. Differentiation among suppliers, forward integration by suppliers, or backward integration by industry firms, and so on. Buyer bargaining power. In Porter's 5 force analysis, buyers are direct customers that buy products or services from an industry. Buyers do not buy directly from suppliers unless suppliers are forward integrated or buyers are backward integrated. To assess buyer bargaining power, you need to identify the most important buyers first. The first mistake that most analysts make is only looking at consumers. Consumers are very often not the buyers that should be analyzed. For example, with the soft drink industry above, consumers very rarely buy directly from soft drink manufacturers. An analysis that focused on buyer bargaining power of consumers in this industry would be extremely flawed. The second biggest mistake commonly made in analyzing this force is overemphasis of switching costs. While switching costs are relevant, the relative number of buyers compared to the number of firms in the industry and the volume of the purchase by the average buyer are by far the most important factors in determining buyer bargaining power. For example, in many retail industries, there are thousands or even millions of buyers, each making a relatively small number of purchases each year. Retail consumers rarely have any power over the prices. The threat of substitutes. In Porter's 5 force analysis, substitutes refer to products or services sold by firms outside of the industry that customers could choose instead of products or services sold by the industry. Substitutes for the soft drink industry include water, coffee, alcoholic beverages, not different options for sodas you would find at a convenience store or supermarket. The intensity and threat of rivalry in Porter's 5-force analysis. Rivalry refers to the intensity which firms need to compete with each other for customers. Most students make the mistake of claiming that every industry has strong rivalry. This is obviously not the case, or it would be pointless to discuss this force at all. There are 3 main factors in determining the strength of this force. First is the number of competitors. More competitors means stronger rivalry. The second factor is how easy or difficult it is for industry firms to differentiate themselves. More differentiation and brand loyalty, which follows it, means lower rivalry. The third important factor is industry growth. If the industry is growing rapidly, this lowers rivalry because the firms in the industry can grow profits without taking market share from competitors.